In the year 2022, 4 astronauts will leave Earth for a 7-month journey to Mars. They will never return. They will either die on the way or they will die on Mars, hopefully of old age. An idea belonging to Bas Lansdorp, who is founder of Mars One. He's also, as you would imagine, an entrepreneur, and his vision, which he says he can turn into reality, is creating a society on Mars.
Mars One will establish human settlement on Mars in 2023. In that year, the first group of 4 humans will land on Mars. Every 2 years after that, another group will join the settlement.
My first impression was that this is an extraordinary project by people with vision and imagination.
This is the plan. In 2016, a communication satellite and a supply mission will be sent to Mars. In 2018, a large planetary rover will be sent to Mars. It will drive around on Mars to find the best location for the settlement.
In 2020, living units, life support units, a rover and more supplies will be sent to Mars. The rovers will prepare the settlement for human arrival. They will extract the inflatable section from the living unit. The life support unit will prepare the outpost for arrival of the humans. The crew will depart in September 2022, when the settlement is fully operational and habitable. They will be flying to Mars in a transit habitat with a lander attached to it.
7 months later, in April 2023, the humans will land on Mars, the next giant leap for mankind.
This project seems to be the only way to fulfill humanity's dream to explore outer space. It is going to be an exciting experiment. Let's get started.
Mars One invites you to join us in this great adventure.
I do think that we can actually establish a human base on Mars, growing into a colony for, in fact, a small fraction of NASA's current budget. For a small fraction of NASA's current budget, we can have a space program that explores and settles new worlds. Now, once you have a colony on Mars, or even a substantial base, what you're going to use that base for is both to support exploration and to support research in how to be self-sustaining on Mars.
Terraforming is where we take a planet that's currently not habitable and change it so that life can survive on it. With Mars, the biggest problem is that it's too cold and the atmosphere is too thin. In order to make it habitable, we need to both increase the temperature and increase the pressure on Mars. The first step in that is probably making super greenhouse gases that will warm up the atmosphere. As the planet warms, water and carbon dioxide from the subsurface and also from the polar caps is going to be released into the atmosphere. That will thicken the atmosphere, which will warm the planet further, but it will also increase the pressure such that liquid water can be stable on the surface of the planet.
We can learn how to grow crops on Mars using Martian water and Martian CO2 and Martian sunlight and Martian soil. We can learn how to make bricks and ceramics and glasses. We can learn how to extract geothermal power from the subsurface. We can learn how to make metals, wires, tubes, habitation structures, plastics.
And this way you build on the settlement little by little. With the space station, we've certainly shown that we can do construction in space, but it's still something very difficult.
Going to Mars is something within our current capabilities. Terraforming Mars is not. But it will be within the capabilities of the people of the future, provided we continue on a vector that supports human liberty and the development of new technologies. We'll need to create a whole ecosystem on Mars. And there will be a whole variety of plants and animals that will be needed, from the highest to the lowest, to construct a self-sustaining and expanding and evolving ecosystem on Mars. And in fact, Mars will never be exactly like the Earth. For example, Mars will always have 1/3 gravity. So plants and animals will evolve in new ways on Mars. We will get new species of plants and animals evolving on Mars. We'll get new species of humans evolving on Mars and on other worlds that we go to as we move out through the solar system and on to the stars.
They never told us much. Just that Robert, my brother, had got this grant to do some kind of work out there. That's the last we heard. It's not knowing that's the worst.
By the late 60s, the Earth was already so trapped within an envelope of its own pollution that heat from the sun and the Earth's industrial processes was having increasing difficulty in escaping. 10 years earlier than Gerstein's prediction, the notorious greenhouse effect, a thickening of the outer atmosphere due to the 8-fold increase in the carbon dioxide levels, had become a reality. As the atmosphere became more dense, extreme variations of temperature were experienced, from intense heat to equally unprecedented cold. But the most frightening discovery which scientists made was that last year's unmelted snow line is the next step to a future and unavoidable ice age.
At the Huntsville, Alabama conference of 1957, my ideas were at last being taken seriously by a small group of senior physicists and government advisors. But by then, of course, it was too late. There was some discussion in secret.
Can you tell me anything about that?
It was all very theoretical.
Well, look, I can understand your reluctance.
Look, all I'm prepared to say is there were 3 alternatives for discussion. The first 2 were crazy. Forget about them. The third alternative, maybe not so crazy. But I don't know whether anything was ever done about it.
Can you tell me what it was?
We had agreed at the Huntsville conference that there was nothing we could do to cut either world population or the consumption of resources essential for survival on Earth. Alternative 3 was a much more limited option. It was an attempt to ensure that at least some of the human race survived the consequences. We were theorists, not technicians, but we realized we were talking about a kind of space travel which had only appeared in scientific fiction so far.
What, you mean go to some other planet?
I mean, get the hell off this one whilst there's still time.
Here is a picture of a supposedly dead planet, the nearest one to Earth. Mars would appear to offer little prospect of survival if these photographs from Viking 2 are to be believed. But are they? Mariner 4 passed close enough to Mars to send back the best photographs of its surface we'd had so far. But was it all just like this?
Mars has always been a source of fascination to mankind and a mystery. In the early days of astronomy, Mars was believed to have artificially constructed canals, which was taken as evidence of intelligent life on the planet. Later, this theory was discredited. In its place, we had a picture of barren, inhospitable planet, inimical to the survival of any form of life. Then, more recently, an interesting idea was put forward. Suppose life had existed on Mars. As the climate and other conditions worsened, any surviving life would have formed into a state of hibernation. awaiting the return of more favorable conditions. It was even suggested that the atmosphere which had sustained life may have become entrapped in the surface soil of the planet.
We're getting a good picture here and can make a fair amount of detail. How is it with you? Fine here, Houston, Roger. Stand by to scan. Can you make your sound sequence camera for scanning? Okay, and mode 1 scanning. Stand by and move on. Standing by. Roger, standing by. Hey, isn't that an old river map? Can you verify that your town? Roger, Houston, we saw that. Stand by for readings, Houston. Standing by, Town. Temperature 4 degrees Celsius. Температура 4 градуса Цельсия. Wind speed 21 kilometers per hour from southwest. Скорость ветра 21 км в час. Atmosphere pressure 707.7 millibars. Атмосфера давления 7 millibars. It's good. It's good, Yuri. On the nose, this работает. Stand by for landing, Yuri, now. Stand by. Мы достигли. Hallelujah. We're here. My God, what is that? Something moving. Something moved there. What the hell is it? Что там двигается, активирует? Смотрите, здесь вода и воздух. Подожди, есть рысь. Boy, if they ever take the wraps off this thing, it's going to be the biggest date in history. 22nd May, 1962. We're on the planet Mars, and we have life. Замечательно! Отлично! Поздравляем! Наконец-то!
We believe that to be an authentic record of the first and secret landing on Mars by an unmanned space probe from Earth. We also believe the date given, May the 22nd, 1962, to be accurate. Clearly, the blanket of total security by which this information has been covered could only have been maintained by the active cooperation of governments at very high level. Equally clearly, there must have been powerful reasons why the true conditions on Mars, suitable as they appear to be for human habitat, have been kept secret. Indeed, the effort which has gone into persuading the rest of the world that the opposite is true argues that some operation of supreme importance has been going on beneath the security cover. We believe that that operation is Dr. Carl Gerstein's Alternative 3.
In June of 1977, a documentary edition of Science Report was aired on Anglia TV in Britain that examined Alternative 3, an investigation of rumors that scientists had determined that by the early years of the 21st century, the Earth's surface would be unable to support life due to pollution leading to catastrophic climate change. It was proposed that there were 3 alternatives to assure humanity's survival. Shortly after this video was aired, it was debunked as a hoax, a clever dramatization parading as an investigative news report. However, this fiction was in part based on solid evidence that Alternatives 1, 2, and 3 were seriously proposed secret programs. researcher Bill Cooper claimed seeing official Defense Department files that revealed a symposium was held in 1957 which was attended by some of the great scientific minds then living. They reached the conclusion that by or shortly after the year 2000, the planet would self-destruct due to increased population and man's exploitation of the environment. By secret executive order of President Eisenhower, MJ-12 scholars were ordered to study this scenario and make recommendations from their findings. MJ-12 confirmed the findings of the scientists and made 3 recommendations called Alternatives 1, 2, and 3. On May 22, 1962, a space probe landed on Mars and confirmed the existence of an environment which could support life. Not long afterward, the construction of a colony on planet Mars began in earnest. Today, cities exist on Mars populated by specifically selected people from different cultures and occupations taken from all over the Earth. A public charade of antagonism between the Soviet Union and the United States has been maintained over all these years in order to fund projects in the name of national defense, when in fact we are the closest allies. Is there any substance to this urban legend?
This all started with an anomalous photograph, a NASA JPL Magellan Space Science Systems photograph that came out from the Mars Observer. It's just something really weird, and I'm going to show you what that photograph is. We looked at it and we said, we'd like to know what's there. And that's exactly what the military does and did when there is remote viewing needs for something that they have information for. This is the target image. It's on Mars. Again, it's a Magellan Space Science Systems photograph, NASA JPL. You can get it yourself and on the web. Now, the interesting thing about it is that right up here at the top, you see a spray. Now, that spray, or what it looks like a spray, has got a shadow underneath it, a straight nozzle that's horizontally placed, what looks like a pipeline going into a dome. Now, we would not be interested in these domes if it was not for the spray, but the spray really caught our attention. There's also a very large dome down here that is highly reflective. It looks like it's made out of some type of resin material. Again, it's this spray that was the anomaly, and the nozzle is coming out of. We know of no geological processes that produce a horizontal nozzle with a strong, powerful spray coming out of it. In fact, most geological processes with geysers have flat land and the spray comes up. So that was an anomaly. We wondered what's that all about? Now, for this we have 9 remote viewers. Extensive training spanning typically an average decade or more for each one. There are 4 military or military-derived methodologies. We have extensive and verified public track records for nearly all viewers. So these are not people we don't know. These are all solo and blind sessions. 24 sessions are done in total for the project. 17 had clarity scores of 3, and I'll be explaining that in a little while. The CRV, Controlled Remote Viewing Group, is led by Lynn Buchanan. He was out of Army Intelligence. And the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Group, from the HRVG, Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild Group, is led by Special Wheaton, who came out of Special Forces. Other methodologies that were used are SRV, for Scientific Remote Viewing, TDS, Transdimensional Systems, and TRV, all of which are either directly derived from the military or derived from those methodologies. Well, we have 3 targets. There's target 1A, 1B, and 1C. 1A is the spray itself. Target 1B is a small dome that seems to be connected to the spray by the apparent pipeline. And target 1C is the large dome. We have physical data and we have remote viewing data. Now, this is important for you to understand. When remote viewing is used operationally, say by the military, they have some physical information. Physical information is not always correct. Remember the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Lynn Buchanan once told me that on average the remote viewing data was normally considered about 60% correct. And that is often considered higher than the physical data that comes in. Spies get it wrong sometimes. What the military and other people who use it operationally, such as when we try to use it in a scientific project like this, try to do is to match the physical data with the remote viewing data. So when we have physical data and remote viewing data that are saying the same thing, we have two pieces of independent information, and we call that verifiable information. Anything that is not matched with physical, obvious interpretation, physical data on the remote viewing side is called new information, or we call that speculative. And it remains speculative until some physical information can corroborate it. And now the role of clarity scores. Clarity scores go between 0 and 3. A 0 is a washout, terrible session, nothing's correct. 1, clear target contact, but still tons of mistakes. 2 is really pretty good. 3 is perfect. Okay, I mean a real clear. And these sessions are really good. Of all of these sessions, 24 sessions, 17 had scores of 3. Don't try that with untrained viewers. 17 had scores of 3 out of 24. See the spray, the nozzle, the apparent pipeline going into the dome, and the shadow underneath the spray, showing you it's airborne. So target 1A is the spray itself. We want to know. We want to confirm that it's a spray. Target 1B is this small dome. There's also another dome here that looks newer, actually, more shiny reflective material, and there's another one here. But we're going after this dome here. Now, the basic verifiable information for target 1A is that A, a spray of what appears to be a liquid being ejected under pressure from something like a nozzle, a barren, rugged terrain, a nearby domed or peaked formation that may or may not be described as a structure. Target 1B, the basic verifiable information is a domed or peaked formation that may or may not be described as a structure, a surrounding barren, rugged terrain. And since the spray in target 1A is near this domed or peaked formation, the spray may be perceived here as well. Target 1C, the basic verifiable information is a domed or peaked formation that may or may not be described as a structure, a surrounding barren, rugged terrain. Now here's a table that says some of the basic information that's verifiable. Now I'm not going to go through the whole table, but I am going to point out the parts that are relevant to this particular talk, which is the first one right here. Of the remote viewers that scored with clarity scores of 3 for this target, there were 6 sessions. 4 of those sessions explicitly stated that this is a spray, liquid spray being ejected under pressure. There were no disagreeing sessions, and only 2 were ambiguous. What do we mean by ambiguous? They may have been describing a cloudy stuff that was there, but they didn't explicitly state that it was a high-powered spray coming out. But they may have said other things. So it was ambiguous. We have a very conservative coding scheme, and so that's the type of thing we were doing. Not everybody, remember the spray was the target, not anything else. So not everybody picked up that it was near something like a domed structure. A couple people did pick up, by looking around, hey, there's a dome thing over there. And so that was sort of interesting, and that's in the table as well, but I'm not going to go over that. This gives you an idea of what Dick Algar from the Hawaiian Remote Viewing Guild got for his session. This is typical for a 3. Liquid squeezed under pressure seeps out released. He's got the spray here, the parent pipeline, and the dome formation. So that gives us enough information from that session, plus the other stuff he wrote. This is like a 20-page session, all of which is up on our website, farsight.org, to tell us that that's really what he's seeing. That helps us get verifiable information, and we want to get it verified from the other viewers as well similarly. Now, let's remember again the geyser, the pipeline, and the small dome, and then see how nicely that picture matches it. So that's good. Now, this is target 1B, the small dome. Now for this one, of all this information, for time reasons of course, I'm going to focus on only one thing. Is the dome artificial or is it a natural formation? Down here, of the 6 sessions for the viewers that did sessions that got scored clarity scores of 3, 5 of them clearly stated this is a dome formation that is artificial. Only 1 was ambiguous, describing the dome formation but not going into it and seeing if it was artificial. No disagreeing sessions. Now for the large dome. Let's go after that. The great thing with operational remote viewing is you can send them into the dome and poke their nose around and see what's in there. This is all done blind. They could have, as far as they're concerned, they could have been given the Eiffel Tower for a target. They don't know what they're looking at. Well, let's look at that. And again, of the 5 sessions that were clarity scores of 3, 4 said that the domed formation was an artificial structure. Only 1 was ambiguous. There were no dissenting. And of course, they all got the normal stuff. There was a lot of people that there were no dissenting information for the normal things like barren landscape, dry environment, rugged mountainous terrain, things like that. This is a good picture that's very typical of the type of information we were getting. This is Daz Smith. He's controlled remote viewing, works with Lynn Buchanan. And Daz Smith drew this large dome, and of course he went into it, and there were chambers within the dome connected with tunnels that connect the chambers. And then he noted that there was a huge amount of flashing light. That flashing light came across in a whole bunch of sessions, so it's not just Daz Smith. These things are radiating light, blinkety, blinkety, blink. There's a huge amount of energy. Okay, let's go through quickly, just in a minute, what we're talking about. A summary of some of the verified and some of the new information. Some of this is verified, meaning physical and remote viewing matched together, and some of it's new, which remains speculative. The domes are artificial, or they, from this study, appear artificial. Subjects work inside the domes, technology is involved, the original builders are apparently ancient, current inhabitants do not fully understand the technology, they are missing spare parts. There is enormous power generating technology, intense lights flashing from the domes, sense of despondency among the inhabitants, it's a hardship assignment, the subjects apparently cannot return home and they knew that when they accepted the assignment. There is no extraterrestrial content to these RV data. That may seem surprising to you, but the subjects could be human. Their origin is totally unknown from the perspective of this study. This could be, as Lynn Buchanan emphasized to me, a black military operation. There's more money in that budget than you could possibly blink at. And there are unregistered flights going out of Cape Canaveral all the time that never get reported in the press. So that is an actual possibility. It also could be that there's decoding errors. We have to leave that open as a possibility. This new information is speculative, remember? Unless it's matched. We don't have photos of these subjects, so that part is speculative, and it must remain speculative. The new information is speculative since it cannot yet be verified. But the good thing about that is these are leads, and this is how it's used operationally, remote viewing. These are leads that we can now follow up on.